Good morning, everyone. Today we are examining Jeremiah chapter 11 and looking at some lessons from this particular chapter. We recognize, as we talked about yesterday, that this is the start of a new message from Jeremiah that will go through chapter 12 as well. But I want you to notice some of the things that, as we go through chapter 11, we can see and pull out that will have some value for us and that will be things that we can then apply to our lives. First of all, in the opening statements of this message, beginning in verse number 3, God tells Jeremiah to say to the men of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, "Thus says the Lord God of Israel, Cursed is the man who does not obey the words of this covenant, which I commanded your fathers in the day that I brought them out of the land of Egypt, from the iron furnace, saying, Obey my voice and do according to all that I command you. So shall you be my people, and I will be your God, that I may establish the oath which I have sworn to your fathers, to give them a land flowing with milk and honey, as it is this day." You have this message that Jeremiah is told to give, and that is, "Cursed is the man who does not obey the words of the covenant." Well, what covenant? Well, he's gone all the way back to the beginning of the law of Moses. Now, it has been hundreds of years since the law of Moses was given. It's been about 8 centuries since the law of Moses was agreed to. And yet God tells the people of Judah and Jerusalem in Jeremiah's day that that law is still binding, that that covenant is still binding, that those promises are still binding. You know, some people look at the law of God today and they say, well, it's been around for so long, it is so ancient, it is so archaic that it's not valid anymore. It's outlived its usefulness, and therefore we don't have to pay any attention to it anymore. And yet God here shows that until he either fulfills the covenant or it is taken out of the way, it doesn't change and it doesn't end. It does not outlive its usefulness. It doesn't have an expiration date upon it. And the same holds true with the new covenant under which we live today. There is no expiration date that, in 2,000 years or 3,000 years or 5,000 years, it is no longer valid anymore, and you can do whatever you want to because the process of expectation has elapsed. Instead, you drop down to verses 9 and 10, and God says, "A conspiracy has been found among the men of Judah and among the inhabitants of Jerusalem." What is this conspiracy? The conspiracy is they have turned their back to the iniquities of their forefathers and gone after other gods to serve them. And so, in other words, they have conspired to turn away from the law of God and to follow after idols. That's the conspiracy. The conspiracy is they have decided together. This wasn't just one individual's idea or a couple of people who plotted to do this, but he says overwhelmingly the people as a whole have conspired. They have decided to break their promises. They have decided to break the law, and they have decided to go after other gods. Conspiracy is a term that a lot of times we run from in our world today because it gets you accused of all kinds of things. And yet here God says it is a intentional action of rebellion undertaken by a large number of people. It is a conspiracy. I want you to also move down to verse number 14 because there's a very interesting statement there in verse 14. On the heels of all of this that has been said, he says in verse 14, "So do not pray for this people, or lift up a cry of prayer for them, for I will not hear them in the time that they cry out to me because of their trouble." God tells Jeremiah, he says, do not pray for this people. That is one of the most interesting statements that we hear from God in the midst of all of this. Because obviously our first inclination when it comes to anything is, well, I'll pray for you. And certainly we have seen the leaders of the people of God, whether it be Moses or whether it be Joshua or David or whomever, be ones who were willing to go and to pray for the people and to pray for difficult situations and to pray for those problems to be resolved. God says, don't pray, because at this point, I'm not going to listen. My mind is made up. And I'm going to do things this way, no matter what you request. God has had enough. And God has, as we might say, he's had it to hear with the people of Judah and with their rebellion. And so God says, do not pray for this people or lift them up. But not everybody liked what Jeremiah had to say. Not everybody was pleased with Jeremiah's presentation of events and facts. And you come down to verse number 19, and Jeremiah is going to tell, in somewhat coded language, if you will, what it is that transpires with the messages that he's presenting. He says in verse 19, "But I was like a docile lamb brought to the slaughter, and I did not know that they had devised schemes against me, saying, Let us destroy the tree with its fruit, and let us cut him off from the land of the living, that his name may be remembered no more." Jeremiah is going to have plots to kill him. There are going to be those who are going to try to remove him from the equation because of the message that he is bringing to the people of Judah. Now, God tells Jeremiah that he will take care of Jeremiah and that he will bring justice upon those who are seeking to do this. And yet, that's not always a lot of comfort for an individual who is having his life threatened for teaching the truth and for presenting what God tells him to present. So just because we say what we're supposed to say, go where we're supposed to go, and do what we're supposed to do, doesn't mean everybody's going to be happy with us. And that's certainly true today. Standing for what is right, standing for the truth, and presenting it the way that it needs to be presented is increasingly unpopular in our world today. But it doesn't mean that we get to just leave it behind or pretend that it doesn't exist. Instead, we must continue doing what's right. Tomorrow we will come back and look at Jeremiah chapter 12. And I hope that these things have been beneficial to you. But until then, I hope you have a great day.